This is our inaugural episode. It's imperfect, better after broken. I have been looking forward to this moment and this conversation.
Yeah, me too. We've been talking about this for a while, planning and scheming and working through the nerves to be live and ready to roll right now. I'm pretty stoked. I've been looking forward to this all day. So I'm glad you're here with me, and I'm glad our listeners are here with us as well.
This conversation is an invitation, I think, to think differently, to really look at our perspectives and to have some fun. I love hearing your stories and I learn a lot from you. Looking forward to, especially our topic today. I always leave our conversations thinking a little differently and being a little more curious.
I have the same respect for your stories as well. And for our listener out there, I think that's what we want to be able to do is through our storytelling and maybe pulling in some of our listener stories at times will hopefully provide some great lessons and anecdotes that will challenge the way people look at things and hopefully give them a new perspective on how to go forward.
This concept of imperfect, better after broken. We should tell the story of how it came about. It was such a cool day.
We were talking about how life has a way of working out and how the struggles and the hard times that we go through, they tend to lead to these beautiful moments on the other side. And when you're in the mess of it, you're in the slog, you're kind of like, this is terrible. Like, this is not fun. I'm not enjoying it. Whether it's a breakup that you went through in high school, the pitch you wish you would have swung at during Little League, or the presentation that didn't work out well but led to something else later on, the ability to iterate and to learn and to grow reminds me of the wonderful Philadelphian, Yo Adrian, I'm still here, right? And Rocky IV, when Rocky is just like after he got pounded by Drago, right? Like, he's still there.
Getting back up after we break or we fall or we swing and a miss. The Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's where the good stuff is. On the other side of that brokenness is how we come out of it, how we take the hit and bounce, is being unstoppable. Get back up and don't let defeat take it out of you.
I saw a commercial for Rocky IV, and every time I watch that movie, I get so nervous. I've seen it 100 times, and I'm always afraid he's going to lose. And then he cuts Drago, and it's like, wait a minute. He's getting pounded, right? Like, but he could win. He might be able to come back. And there's all this self-doubt. I mean, really, that movie, we could do a whole episode. Maybe we will in a future iteration on Rocky IV and kind of how that is a great metaphor for being better after broken.
I must break you. And that determination that he has, that he's got to take him down. And Rocky has this unbreakable spirit, but we go in there with him in that moment of feeling exhausted and broken and bleeding and just lost. The crowd isn't sure what's going to happen. We aren't sure what's going to happen, but we're cheering for him. There is no great hero story without an overcoming of some brokenness.
Yeah, and that look in his eye when he tells him, I must break you, you see that quick fear and then the determination.
Yeah.
This is not where I thought we were going to go right off the beginning, but I am excited.
Perfectly
this is wonderful,
imperfect.
Right? From Philadelphia's own, like, here we go. And I say that as somebody who is not necessarily a big fan of Philadelphia, at least not the Eagles. So, I mean,
we're really going to listen. Talk about an imperfect season. I can't.
Yeah.
Ooh, too soon.
The only thing better than the Giants winning is the Eagles losing. So, and our audience will come to learn I am unfortunately a Giants fan, and so that has come with lots of that. Talk about imperfect.
So a lot of patience and heartache and persistence.
Today we want to dive into a concept that really has kind of influenced both of us, and we talk about a lot, and that's the concept of Wabi Sabi, which is the Japanese philosophy of finding beauty in imperfection and impermanence. This isn't just about aesthetics. It's kind of about resilience and authenticity and that Rocky-esque courage to embrace what's real and to look the thing that's scary in the eye and say, you're going to try to break me, but I'm going to keep getting up. As you will learn through our topic today and throughout this whole series, perfection is a myth. Brokenness is not the end. It's often the beginning of something extraordinary.
When we are broken and beaten down and kind of in our last round and exhausted. If only we could look at that brokenness and find the beginning or the hope, the fact that that can be a doorway into something even better. It's so hard to think that way in the moment, which is why I love the concept that you're introducing of Wabi Sabi, the beauty in the brokenness.
Being rooted in simplicity and acceptance. And I think that that is really important, that acceptance piece of recognizing that the beauty is, in fact, in the imperfect. I mean, you think about some of the most famous works of art, lots of them were readily admired for their beauty, but then there are some, I mean, I think the Mona Lisa comes to mind, where people at first, when they saw it, were like, okay, cool. I don't think that when it was revealed, the critics at the time looked at the Mona Lisa the same way that folks now who wait outside the Louvre or crowd the Louvre to see it are. Perspective matters. And how your perspective can shift when you're scared, in the moment, in the mud, on top of the hill, and being able to really start to challenge yourself with that recognition that, okay, maybe I can get through the moment quicker if I'm looking to find the beauty and the imperfection and appreciate the transient nature of moments instead of expecting everything to always be awesome.
This concept of radical acceptance. Remember when you introduced the I believe button?
Early in my career in the military, somebody drew on a piece of paper the I believe button. It was a little button, and he looked at me, and he's this salty warrant officer, and he maybe 30 years in, he's like, just hit the I believe button. And I'm like, what? He's like, this is happening one way or another, but if you hit the I believe button, you'll feel better about it because you'll feel like you have a vote. And I was like, that's great, right? So boom, I believe. That's it. Let's go. And then you kind of commit yourself to, okay, the only way out is through. I'm going to find a way to do this. The I believe button in that moment really provides people with a little bit of agency. I think that's one of the hardest things, and where I think the power of Wabi Sabi can be found is there's a helplessness that comes with adversity or when there's challenge. But when you can say, you know what, I still have my hand on the wheel. I'm involved. I have some agency. I have some autonomy. I have some authority to act. That feeling of helplessness melts, or at least it erodes a little bit. Rocky is getting pounded in the ring, but there's moments where he's like, I get to fight back too. I'm not just taking it.
It is about taking your power back or realizing that you have it in a moment when you might not even realize that it's there. One of my favorite books is The Missing Piece. Shel Silverstein wrote these incredibly simple, which is one of the Wabi Sabi principles that you talked about, stories. And in the book, there's this concept of I'm on my way, I'm looking for my missing piece. And it's this little Pac-Man dude that's rolling around and looking at, this piece is too big, this piece is too small, this piece is too sharp, this piece is too dull. In this search to find the missing piece, you're not broken because you have a missing piece. That's part of what makes you you. I am related to the actress Ellen Barkin. And one of the things I love about her is her smile is crooked. It's not perfect. It's broken. It's like it, you know, that's part of what makes her her. And if you took away the asymmetry of that smile, she wouldn't be Ellen Barkin. So it makes me appreciate the Wabi Sabi, or the imperfection, the beauty in the broken.
Her smile makes her unique. Things that have the weathering, they have the story to them, they have the broken piece that's been either glued back together, or as we've talked about in kintsugi, where the Japanese art where they repair pottery with gold or silver fill to take something that would have otherwise been discarded and celebrate its beauty by making it better or repaired. Instead of hiding the cracks, you're highlighting them. And you're celebrating. One of my buddies tells a story about how his first date with his wife went epically wrong. And I remember at the time when he told me about it, I'm like, wow, you really messed that up. And then now, 20 some odd years later, it's like, that's a really powerful memory for them. Remember when we almost messed it up, but we saved it?
I spent the first half of my career trying to avoid, hide, compensate for, cover up my many glaring flaws, trying to be really polished when I would speak in front of a large crowd and have big words and sound together. And I had an executive coach who focuses on getting people ready to go on stage. She said to me, play into your flaws, like own them. And it was this mind-boggling concept to, rather than trying to hide them, kintsugi them, put gold on the fact that you are not the typical executive or the typical leader in this space. Like, own that. That becomes part of your brand. Unthinkable based on what I had thought it took to be a great leader. And the minute I started embracing my flaws and leaning into them and sharing stories about how I have failed, my career took off. And that's when things started to really go well for me, when I leaned into the broken, unfinished part of self.
So by leaning in and embracing it, it was almost liberating and freed you to really be a better version of yourself, or to be the best version of yourself, instead of holding on too tightly.
What if your mistakes, your failures, weren't things to hide, but things to embrace? What are the teachings of Wabi Sabi?
There's 5 major teachings of Wabi Sabi. The first is, through acceptance, you find freedom. Out of acceptance, you find growth. I may slip a or a like in my speech, or I may cough, or every now and again I slip into talking like a pirate instead of talking like a boardroom polished professional. And I can be embarrassed by it, which I am at times, or I could just apologize and keep moving.
When my Philly comes out, I gotta be worried about it. How am I coming across?
Every now and again, I'll drop a well-timed y'all in from growing up in Southern Maryland, and people are kind of surprised because they just don't expect that. And so, yeah, it's like, yep, I grew up in a small one-stoplight town. These are the things that happen. I will say words like y'all in fixin'.
Fixin' too. And isn't that the area of our region where everyone's Hun?
Ooh, that's good Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
You want a natty bow, Hun? My brother's a big Baltimore Orioles fan and enjoying a natty bow and loves when somebody gives him a Hun when he orders one. Chris will appreciate that. So the second major teaching of Wabi Sabi is that all things in life, including you, are in an imperfect state of flux. So strive not for perfection, but for excellence instead. When
you think you're doing really great in life, savor those moments. My grandfather said to me, be in that moment and celebrate, take your victory walk, but don't get too comfortable on that part of the journey, because you're also going to have to get comfortable during the parts that don't go so well and where things fall apart. But remember that neither of those peaks or valleys are forever. I really value that concept of imperfect state of flux.
Yeah. Strive not for perfection, but for excellence. And it reminds me, my favorite Vince Lombardi quote: we will relentlessly chase perfection, knowing full well we'll never attain it, but hoping we'll attain excellence in the process. If you have a really good process in place, then you can account for outside factors that, we did everything right, but the snow came, and so I couldn't make the delivery date, right? You can't control the snow, but you did all the other things. Now you can revise, like, okay, what do we need to do now to account for these things? And I think sometimes, especially in business, people get really wrapped up in perfection instead of repeatable, executable, people-centric processes. And then they try to measure this thing that's immeasurable instead of saying, do we have a process that's repeatable and executable?
It's a home base to go back to when things fall apart. They talk about going back to the fundamentals when you're struggling, or when you watch these competition shows, whether it's cooking or Amazing Race, just like focusing on the things that that are ingrained in you, instead of trying to get fancy or going out there and experimenting necessarily with something new and innovative. Sometimes it's just about going back to those basics. Shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll land among the stars.
All right, so the third of the 5 major teachings is to appreciate the beauty of all things. This includes the beauty that hides beneath the surface of what seems to be broken.
The less than perfect parts of the painting. The voice of the singer that has a little bit of a break that isn't perfect. X Factor or American Idol. It's not about the perfection. It's about being all in, including the beauty you said that hides beneath the surface of what seems to be broken. What does that bring up for you?
I can relate to the second bullet, strive not for perfection, but for excellence instead. I love to cook for people. I love to do nice for people. And if I overcook the steak or I burn something, I get really agitated with myself because I wanted it to be perfect. And for me, that's a great reminder of, yeah, you may have burned it, but you're still with your family. You still have an opportunity to have a beautiful moment within this thing that might otherwise not have landed. So yeah, right? I didn't have the perfect steak. The internal temp was 170 instead of 165. I'm still with my favorite people in the world. I'm still breaking bread with the people I love.
You just brought a story back to me that I haven't thought about in a long time. My mother's famous John Denver pork chops. What is it? John Denver pork chops. When we were kids, my brother and I, we would love to listen to my mom sing because she has the voice of an angel, of a dove, and she loves music. She absolutely loved John Denver. And so she was cooking dinner, as she would often do. She'd turn on music really loud and we would be dancing around and doing our thing. And she would get so caught up in the music of John Denver that this one particular day we're dancing in the living room, hanging out, having a great time. And my little brother said, "Something smells like smoke." And so we're dancing to John Denver. My mom flies into the kitchen and there are these black pork chops, John Denver pork chops. The reason they're called that is because she was so enraptured in the joy of spending time with her kids and singing the song that really awakened her heart from within, that she blackened the pork chops, got blackened. So the whole house is filled with smoke. And my dad comes home and he was like, "What is it?" And they couldn't stop laughing. And the meal wasn't the nice that she was trying to prepare for everyone. But I'm here now 50 years later telling this story and remembering with such joy those precious times with my mom and my dad and my brother. Imperfect and all. John Denver pork chops are a symbol of imperfect.
You and I are experienced people.
Seasoned.
Right? Do you remember Kazoo from the Jetsons?
Oh, yes.
He was essentially this little alien that would pop up and provide wisdom from time to time. He was also George's somewhat nemesis. But wouldn't it be cool if like a Kazoo-esque character popped up in those moments and said, "I know you're frustrated about your pork chops, but you're going to laugh about this and this will be one of your favorite memories," right? Like how cool would that be for people if you had that sort of like, as the canoe was rocking, somebody grabbed it and steadied it for you to be like, "Settle down, take a breath. This is actually going to be one of your favorite memories," and then kind of hit play on the tape again.
You are onto something. And in fact, there's research from Michigan State University that if you can get out of your first person point of view for just a second and think in the third person. So an example would be Susan is really blowing it right now with trying to cook cook this steak, but she's trying her heart out. And what she's hoping to do is make a fun moment for her family. Talking about yourself to yourself in the third person gives you that psychological distance that actually creates lower cortisol levels, lower stress, and more ability to be fully present in the moment by putting yourself in that third person. It's the kazoo factor.
So if I'm having a bad moment, if I instead of saying to myself, "Oh, I really messed that up," if I just were to say, "Jeff, that wasn't what you were trying. Next time, let's try this," it gives me better separation and space to process and learn from it.
Exactly. Look at the movie without being immersed and helpless as the character in the movie of your life. You appreciate the beauty that hides beneath the surface of what seems to be broken. Pausing the movie of your life to say, treasure this moment. You did this the other day. We were talking to somebody and they had a toddler come in the moment.
Oh yeah, our coworker's daughter showed up and she apologized to everybody, and And I was like, you know what? Don't apologize to anybody. I would love for my son or daughter to pop into the office and interrupt a call right now and to get a hug. It leads into this fourth topic, right? That slow and simple is the only way to feel joy of what it means to be alive. I think so often we get immersed in the hamster wheel of life that we forget to slow down and savor what's happening. One day, your kid's going to be in a different town and they're not going to interrupt your call just to give you a hug and tell you how wonderful they are. And probably before it comes to that, they're not going to, if they interrupt your day at all, it's going to be to tell you, you know, you provide everything for me, but I'm not sure you're as smart as I think you are. But really being able to slow down to feel the joy of what it means to be alive is that fourth principle of Wabi Sabi. I think that's a great connection between the two.
What's the song? Cats in the Cradle? How much I wanted to make the connection, but Dad is too busy. And then by the time Dad wakes up and realizes that he's missed all this time with his kid, the kid is too busy. My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking before I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, I'm going to be like you, Dad. You know, I'm going to be like you. And then it goes on, and it's this kid running after his dad, trying to make that connection. And then flip to the rest of the song. Well, he came home from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please? And so missing those moments when you're talking about number 4, slow and simple is the only way to feel the joy of what it means to be alive. It's about presence.
I experienced this personally, and a lot of the executives that I work with struggle with that presence. You feel like you're tied to your phone and people at work can get a hold of you and you're so important, and not to diminish anyone's importance, but this tear between, I have to answer this work email, I want to help you with your homework. I want to be at your Little League game. I have this work trip I have to go on. And then really being able to help people find peace and serenity and quality over quantity. Time is not your greatest gift to somebody. Your attention is. And that really changed my perspective on things, that I would love to give you all of my time and all of my attention. Quantity has a quality all of its own, which is important. But you know what? I think if you were to ask family members, would you rather have a half hour of your loved one's undivided attention or 4 hours of them not being around?
And being distracted and, quote, the myth of multitasking, which now research tells us is not a thing. Multitasking is simply rapid succession of serial attention switching, which is deadly on productivity. And there's no such thing as true multitasking. So would I rather have a half an hour of dedicated and thoughtful attention or 4 hours of distracted, parallel presence? I'll take that half. I'll take 5 minutes of meaningful attention.
I find as my kids are older and more engaged in more things, sometimes just asking them and giving them a choice too helps with that. Slows it down and honors their perspective too. Hey, what would be better? Would you rather do something for a half hour, just the two of us, or you want to sit down and watch a movie and we can both play on our phones while we're just and coexist together? There's beauty in both, but I definitely think quality over quantity wins out, at least in my perspective.
For the joy of what it means to be alive, slow and simple, and being intentional with what you do with your energy. If you can put your phone away, you will make a massive difference with the person you are connecting with. Eye contact and true dedicated attention cannot be overestimated. There is research that when you're physically in a room with someone and their phone is present, even if it's turned upside down and put across the other, just the presence of the phone in the room has a significant diminishing effect on the power of and the other person feeling heard, seen, and valued. Just the presence of the phone. So I am now making myself, when I go to a meeting, not bring my phone out, which kills me, because what I want to do is I want to scroll and I want to check and I want to keep track of the time. But what we are not doing enough of is having full presence. So I love number 4, slow and simple, the only way to feel joy of what it means to be alive.
So the last one, and this one may be my favorite, and it's probably the one I'm working on the most personally, is stop chasing happiness. If you want to feel happy, become content exactly where you are with all that you have.
That crazy myth of, if I just had a BMW, or if I just had season tickets to the game, when you find yourself saying, if I just, chances are that just won't be enough. So your point about stop chasing happiness through material or experiential wishing and wanting. In the world of psychology, the essence of dialectical behavior therapy is all about presence. Everything at this moment is exactly the way it is supposed to be. You think, well, that's not possible when, this is broken, or I'm fighting with my loved one, all these things that are broken and wrong. What if everything is exactly the way it is supposed to be right now, in service of your highest purpose, to prepare you for your next right move? It's powerful.
I love that, but I will say that applies to everything except for golf clubs. That next, right? The new putter will definitely make the next round better. The new driver totally will make it better. To be content exactly where you are with what you have. We get so lost in chasing things. We get so lost in this expectation that I have to do more, be more. It really can steal the joy of the moment when you're constantly thinking that everything isn't good enough. And don't wish away what you have, because where you are is where someone else is praying to be. Where I'm at, which in my mind may not be enough, is what somebody is really working their rear ends off or praying their hearts away to get to. It kind of made me stop and really appreciate that.
Abundance mindset is a choice. Recognizing what you have right in front of you, and how your point of frustration and deficit or scarcity would be someone else's wildest dream. It allows us in the moment to entertain the notion of enough. Part of that is the American dream, is we're always striving, we're always reaching, we always believe that there can be more. And I'm all for that. I am very much a striver and an innovator and a, what can I learn and do next? That's an achievement mentality that I will not give up. But what I will create for myself that is transformational is the notion that along the way, I can be grateful and joyful for the enough that I have in that moment. So thank you for introducing that concept of becoming content exactly where you are with all you already have.
You hit a key word in the beginning, and when we were talking about, my barber Roger brought it up too, right? About perception. I think if we were to distill it down to not only perspective and perception, but another word would be appreciation. I could have cooked the steaks perfectly, but I'm still with my family. The kazoo-esque moment of John Denver pork chops stopping. I really thought for a second that was a recipe, by the way. I was like, I got to Google John Denver pork chops, right? But now I'm going to play John Denver tonight because my family's a little tired of me playing the red clay strays. That moment of being able to really have not only the perspective of recognizing what you have, but also the appreciation of it.
I'm going to admit something. I went to a workshop on portrait photography. I'm a photographer. And she started out the workshop with this single quote on a black screen. You never know the value of a photograph until it is the only thing you have left.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a gut punch. And that set the tone for appreciating the moment. So I went that same day and I picked up my mom and we just sat in the car and I said, can I hold your hand? And I just wanted to hold, and I always love her hands. I always love to touch her skin because she's just such a precious human being. And I looked at her hands and I looked at the lines and the imperfections on her hands. And I held her hand and I said, "Can I take a picture of this moment?" She said, "Yeah, go ahead." So I took a picture of us holding hands, of just our hands in that moment. And we will never be that old again, where, time marches, the cruelty of time marches on. But I have a picture of that moment. And in that moment, nothing could have been finer or better or more precious or more perfect than sitting with my mom. And having appreciation like that, Jeff, I know it's fleeting. I know I don't go throughout every day going, "I am so glad we're in this meeting, dealing with this Excel spreadsheet. What an abundant moment." We don't always have that, but to take time with number 5, stop chasing happiness, but sit with it and realize that it's right in front of you. I wonder what our listener is able to conjure when they think of the abundance they have. And I wonder whose hand they might grab and take a photo to appreciate that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. I love that. I was thinking, I have a picture behind me of my dad and I. My dad passed away quite a while ago from cancer. And I have a picture very similar that at the moment when that picture was taken, I was not thrilled with my father. I was not having a good time. He was pulling my first loose tooth. I was not thrilled. And he's laughing. And my father had the most wonderful smile and the most wonderful laugh. And I remember in that moment, I was furious. And now I look at that picture and it just makes me chuckle. Because as a father, I can relate to I can relate to his experience, but my experience is still very visceral from that moment. Had Kazoo said to me, "Settle down, Jeffrey. You're going to look back on this and love it," I probably wouldn't have listened. But now that I'm so glad that my mom took the picture. And at the time, I remember taking the picture and being like, "This isn't funny." I was a bit of an emotional kid. And so I know, right? And so I just, very dramatic. Still probably am. Now I look back at that picture and I love it. It's one of my favorite
It's precious.
memories.
When we as mentors or parents or friends perhaps who have just been a little further down the road, when we are able to have perspective, and like in that moment, your dad knew that it was not the end of the world for you, but you didn't know that in that moment when you're in pain or you're embarrassed or you got this gap, when you are able to have further vista than the person you are with, take the gravity of that moment and the preciousness of their vulnerability and hold that space for them, even if it makes you giggle, because that giggle he had was partly because he knew that you were going to survive that moment, but he also could connect to just how desperate you felt in that moment. And your mom, as she's snapping that picture, there's empathy and there's sweetness, but there's also the joy of knowing that life does go on and it does get better, the transience of this suffering.
Susan, when you're working with your clients, or even from your experience as a doctor, how are you helping people make that connection as they're processing their trials and tribulations?
I am going to answer it both from the perspective of a psychologist, but also as a leader who is perfectly imperfect in so many ways, imperfect. I am relentless about inviting people to take perspective. So you're looking at this moment where your tooth has come out and you're in pain and you're embarrassed or whatever's happening. If you can look at it a different way, kind of like what we talked about earlier, the invitation to become third person in your own movie and just say, are there other ways to look at this moment? I'm frustrated because if you can be like Rocky and like awaken within you that extra moxie, that extra gear, and you demonstrate to yourself that resilience. You did this the other day, Jeff, when you explained the physiological sigh or the physiologic sigh. Just when you think you've taken all the breath in that you can take a little bit more, and your body's like, wait a minute, I'm already gasping to let out the carbon dioxide that I'm creating, nope, there's a little bit more, and then hold it. It's like proving to you, it's a stretch assignment, the physiologic sigh, a stretch assignment. Can you wait a little longer? Can you take a little bit different perspective than you currently have? One of the magical concepts that I wish I had learned in my 20s or even my 30s or even in my 40s is API, assuming positive intent. Nobody wakes up and says, let me see how I can be a complete
chucklehead
today. Nobody does that. Nobody gets up to cause that. But here we are. We're all just splashing around in our own well, trying to get our water. And we're going to splash on other people sometime. If we can assume positive intent when we get splashed, when we get cut off by somebody driving on the highway, nobody's out there to try to make my life miserable. They're just trying to figure out their own. What do you do? How do you handle it?
And assuming positive intent, and I talk to clients sometimes and even do this with myself about what's the most generous interpretation, right?
Wow.
My assumption is that this person said this to be judgmental. Why can't you be supportive? And maybe in that person's mind, they're being supportive. Wow. Well, when I wear that hat, right, I take the less judgmental hat on and I put the most generous interpretation hat on, or look through it through those lenses, and then the perspective shifts dramatically, right? And then that right back to perspective. I have a whole different perspective about it. Wow, Jeff, or third person me, maybe I can think about it this way. What's the most generous interpretation? Because we internalize the worst of everything. They're out to get me. Are they? Or maybe they're having a bad day and they didn't give you their best moment. Think about the transience of that moment in comparison to everything else and the impermanence of the moment. That wasn't a great interaction with my spouse, or it wasn't the best interaction with my kids, or my coworker and I probably could have been more patient with one another. How do we possibly shape that into something different? The repair process of putting it back together, or appreciating that you could have a John Denver pork chop moment or a pull the tooth moment with anybody in your life. And then moments, whether those moments are days, months, weeks, years, that could be the thing you laugh about. Like my best friend, Brian, and I, one of my best friends, we first met on a golf course randomly, and we got stuck in a thunderstorm for an hour, like lightning everywhere. It was pouring so bad we couldn't drive from underneath the tree we were in because like we were really kind of worried. Now it's one of like kind of our favorite memories that every time we golf, we talk about, I wonder if we're gonna get stuck under a tree today, right? Like that's pretty cool, right? That is Wabi Sabi at its finest. As again, you never know when that moment's gonna happen.
This is Driveway Brian, right?
Yep. My wonderful friend, Brian, it's almost one of my favorite things is he will just show up at the house. I love it. I do the same thing to him. Our wives do not find it as entertaining as we find it to be, but I think everybody needs a friend that just shows up at your house with a beer from time to time.
He is so endearing to me because I got to watch your face. We were in a meeting and all of a sudden you're like vibing and we're solving the world's problems of leadership coaching. And all of a sudden you're like, hold on a minute. And you look over here, it was like squirrel. There's something going on over here. And you're looking out the window, you're like, oh, it's Brian. I'm like, hey, everything okay? You watch you go, oh, yeah, this is my best friend, Brian. I'm like, well, don't you need to go? Like your friend has come to your house. You're like, no, he does that. That kind of connection that you have with someone where you can be your whole and true self is really powerful. The fact that your friendship emerged from under a thunderstorm canopied golf cart under a tree. I'm a firm believer that all relationships are broken in some way. And it's about the repair and who are you willing to go the miles needed to do the repair work. And it's those who stick around and for whom you stick around where the true love emerges and friendship through that repair process when they see us in our imperfect, crooked smile, John Denver pork chop, thunderstorm golf cart kind of way.
Because it's the choice. You're choosing that moment. You're choosing to go deeper. You're choosing to give them 30 minutes of your full undivided attention, or you're choosing to give them the most generous interpretation.
Us doing this Imperfect, Better After Broken show. We had no idea at the start of this hour, and can you believe it's already over? We had no idea how it was going to go. We planned, we talked about the topics we wanted to discuss. We knew that we wanted to center around the Japanese notion of Wabi Sabi, beauty in brokenness, but we weren't sure what stories would come up. We weren't sure, we know we are good colleagues and that we share a belief in the power of coaching and leadership, but we weren't sure what was going to happen. There was kind of this leap of faith. At one point, I think we had that eye contact of this is working. Like, it's cool. Let's keep going. Right. But to be able to do that imperfectly and without every point scripted to perfection is the beauty of brokenness.
Reminds us that life isn't about flawless symmetry. It's about the beauty of the cracks, the wisdom of the scars, and the strength to rebuild. The challenge is this week is to notice the imperfection. I asked somebody earlier in the week in a coaching session, how many Jeeps did you notice on the way into work? And they're like, oh my God, I have no idea. I'm like, exactly, you weren't looking. I bet on the way home, you'll pay attention and you'll notice. And they sent me a message with the number that they observed. This week, my challenge to you is notice the imperfection, not only in yourself, but in others, in your work. And instead of fixing it, and instead of judging it, appreciate it. Apply some perspective. Maybe give people, and I dare say yourself, the most generous interpretation. Give yourself that kazoo moment of, what can I learn from this? How can I laugh about this? How can I make this something that doesn't define me or relegate me to something negative, but builds me into something better? Because after all,
challenge.
Yeah.
No, please. There was a moment of Wabi Sabi just now, and we're, no, you. And I love that we allow that. Tell us more.
After all, perfection isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's experience, it's seasoning. And sometimes the most beautiful things are the burnt dinners. Memory with your parents. The most beautiful things are the ones that have been broken and repaired and captured. Because life isn't defined by what happens to you, but by how you choose to respond.
Embracing the broken parts as the building blocks of your most beautiful and wonderful, flawed self. I appreciate that you brought your perspective to the table and allowed this to kind of unfold in its own organic, kintsugi, gilded kind of manner. I had a ball listening to you and talking with you and thinking about Wabi Sabi and imperfect.
This has been a blast. I can't wait to do it again next week.
Me too. So next week, and every Sunday at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central Time, right here on Sandcastle Radio, America's hottest online variety and music station. It is Imperfect, Better After Broken with Jeff Servello and Susan Hendrich.
And until next time, remember, perfection is a myth. Brokenness is not the end of something extraordinary. Talk to you next week.
Awesome. Thank you. You are so awesome. Well done. We did it. Give me 5.
That was cool.